Data doesn't lie, your go-to for the science behind the art of parenting.
Welcome back, guys. This week we've been talking about COVID-19 so much. It's so devastating what's going on in the world right now. And being a microorganism, there's a lot of discussion on how to prevent and stay healthy. So I thought I would look at sort of the opposite of it, how a microorganism or a group of microorganisms, bacteria, can actually keep us healthy and not make us sick. So we're talking about your gut microbiome. That is the bacteria that live inside you in your GI tract. So grab a pen and paper, grab a cup of coffee. I'm going to go get some tea and we'll dig in when we get back. So what is microbiome? Microbiome just means a group of diverse bacteria. And these bacteria can live in us or on us. As humans, we carry around bacteria in us and on us. And we cohabitate in this human body in a pretty synergistic relationship. That is, we benefit from their presence and they benefit by being present on us. And in particular, the bacteria that live in our GI tract are estimated to be as many as 100 trillion cells. And humans, we only have 10 trillion cells. So you can imagine that bacterial load that we're carrying around and how beneficial it is to us. And because it's beneficial, it's not pathological, meaning making us sick. Another term we could use for it is commensals. So like bacteria we carry around that are beneficial, that don't cause us harm. That's pretty much the bottom line. So that's what a microbiome is. There are many different types of bacteria that make up this microbiome, and I'm not going to be calling the names, or that's a bit too scientific for this discussion. Yes, I know we're talking about the science, but that is like a biology class if I have to tell you all those names. But we'll be talking about how we benefit from the from the presence of these bacteria, and how what we do that alters the types of bacteria we carry around, and in particularly because it's altered, how it affects us and how we can get sick from that. And lastly, of course, I'll give you tips on how to keep our gut healthy and our bacteria that we carry around healthy. How to protect your bacteria, people, and not kill them off. So what does the gut microbiome do to keep us healthy? I'm going to break it down into three big categories because it's a very complex field. And I broke it down in reading the studies that I was looking up. I broke it down into sort of three big categories. One, it protects us. Two, it influences significant metabolic pathways in our bodies. And three, it defends us. And I know protect and defend, but I'll explain what I mean by that. So the first way it helps our immune system by protecting us. So our immune system has two big things. We have an innate immune system that is present by virtue of just being there. It protects us. It's non-specific. It's like a barrier, pretty much. It's non-specific, protects us from whatever may come at it. And the other pathway for our immune system is the adaptive immune system, where we generate a specific response to a specific thing we're trying to fight. So by the presence of the microbiome in our GI tract, our innate immune system in the GI tract is actually developed. And studies show that when that microbiome is not present, that innate system does not develop. So you can imagine that if it doesn't develop, we have no defense against everyday bacteria that we're meeting. And you can't imagine that if we have healthy, diverse group of bacteria present in the GI tract, our bodies are constantly reminded that this bacteria is present. We sort of self-regulate and learn from the bacteria that's there, and we develop an immunity that is present and ready to attack something that's a little different, that it's not used to seeing. So in its simplest form, that's how the innate system, the GI innate system, would protect us. there was one study I was looking at that actually said that when they looked at neonates who had commensals, so healthy bacteria, healthy microbiome, those neonates had a decrease in number of the abnormal immune sort of cells that are you see when the immune system is angry and upregulated and inflamed and fighting back. And they had an increased number of cells, regulatory immune cells, that sort of regulate and dampen down and tell things that everything is okay. So of course that just speaks to the fact that the presence of the bacteria is beneficial to us. The second category of how the bacteria help us, of microbiome help us, is that they produce specific metabolites that help in key pathways in the body, and there are many different ones they produce. They produce things like folate, which is important for as a cofactor in many of our pathways. It's also a vitamin. They produce things like short chain fatty acids, which I think have been the most extensively studied of the metabolites that the microbiomes produce. And they produce things like hormones, which then go act on distant. So they'll produce in the GI tract, and then we'll absorb it, and then it goes and acts on our different organs to regulate the functions of those organs. So by producing metabolites, they are keeping our system working the way it should, right? The things that we can't produce for ourselves, the microbiome produces for us. So that's of the second big category. And then the third category of how microbiome helps us is in defending us. And I use defending different from protecting, because here it's more of I sort of see like there's an attacking process, and it is helping us fight it, versus we're just sitting and chilling, and whatever comes at us, we're just protecting against it. So a healthy microbiome, again, we have papers that show that by these specific metabolites that they produce, they actually decrease cancer proliferation cells. There was one paper that I read I found this so fascinating, where the metabolite that the bacteria produces is a short chain fatty acid called butyrate. It actually tells the cells in our GI tract to consume oxygen. Like, the presence of this particular metabolite tells our cells, hey, eat up all the oxygen you can find. As you use me up, take up the oxygen that you can find. And by decreasing the oxygen that's present in the GI tract, there's no oxygen, or very little oxygen present for pathologic bacteria to survive. And so they die off, and the microbiome is used to this environment, so they can survive. So it actually defends us when it sees another organism that is not good for us. So I thought it was so fascinating. So those are sort of three big categories in which the microbiome help our health. What happens when we've talked about what happens when we have a healthy microbiome? What happens when we have an unhealthy microbiome? We call this dysbiosis, and that it really just means an imbalance in the types of bacteria that we have, and an imbalance in the number of the bacteria that we have. And there's so many studies out there that will support the fact that with dysbiosis it can lead to diseases like obesity, asthma, allergies. It's even linked to mental health and depression, and decreased immune tolerance. So we're not able to tolerate. Our immune system is just a bit more hyperactive, for lack of a better description, in diseases like Crohn's disease or colitis. So it's definitely linked to a lot of the diseases that we face in our everyday life. And things that we do actually affect it, right? Things that we do can actually cause this imbalance, this dysbiosis. And what are these things? Diet. So a diet that's high in sugar and fat, like a Western diet, what we eat, it can actually lead to a low-grade sort of inflammation. Again, this immune tolerance that we were talking about. The same with environmental factors like pollution and smoking, and use of disinfectants in the household actually can lead to dysbiosis. There was one paper I saw where they looked at about 300 infants, and was it 300, 700 infants, and they looked at the infants who had use of a disinfectant as a cleaning product in their home at least once a week, and they compared it to infants who did not use a disinfectant in their home at least once a week, so maybe once a month, or didn't use it at all. And those babies who had a household in which a disinfectant was used ended up having a gut microbiome that we see in people who have diabetes and obesity. And when they looked at those infants again, they followed them up and saw them again at 3 years of age, they saw that they had a higher BMI than the infants who didn't use a disinfectant at home. And I thought, these little things that we do in the house and we don't think about. For one, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be changing a lot of the things I do as I read these studies, as we talk about them. So I was very fascinated. I was very happy to have read that. So that's one of the environmental factors that can actually affect our gut microbiome. We talked about diet. We talked about pollution, environmental factors, and medications. Medications actually affect what happens to our gut microbiome, and you can imagine why, right? Antibiotics will actually kill off some of the bacteria that's present. And the other thing it does too is some antibiotics will actually change the way the microbiome metabolizes or breaks down certain drugs. For example, Tylenol. And we take Tylenol all the time. And in some people who have an unbalanced microbiome, they experience side effects from Tylenol like liver toxicity more frequently versus those who have a balanced microbiome, because we can metabolize the Tylenol more easily such that it's not accumulating and causing us liver toxicity. Again, mind-blowing in my opinion. Things like this that we take for granted. You have a headache, you take a Tylenol, and some people experience symptoms more than others. So just to bear in mind that all of this does impact our life, right? So here's some tips on how we can keep our gut healthy, our gut microbiome. How can we support it? How can we keep it healthy? I'm gonna give you 6 tips. 6 tips, yes, I think. So the first one is consuming probiotics. I completely support the concept of probiotics, but I think I want to give a word of caution, because the studies that promote the use of probiotics will use a particular strain of bacteria at a particular dose, to demonstrate a particular effect or benefit. So we have to be conscious of this. And in addition to using a particular strain and a particular dose of that bacteria, they also use a carrier matrix particular to that study, and that speaks to the viability of the bacteria, how long they survive. So when we consume probiotics, it's good to know these things or read these things on the label. And the benefit from one paper doesn't automatically transfer to that same bacteria at a larger dose or at a lower dose or things like that. I'm going to put a link in the description box below that has a list of clinical trials with the different strains of bacteria and the different doses, so you can make an informed decision about which probiotic you want to consume. So probiotics, I like them. I think it's very beneficial to keeping our gut healthy, but let's make an informed choice as we do it. The second tip will be consuming prebiotics. And really that just means something that our healthy bacteria can actually digest and work on and survive from. So we want to give them food to eat so they survive. And the WHO has nice criteria for that a prebiotic has to meet, right? It has to not be digested in the upper GI tract. It has to be able to get to the lower GI tract in the colon where the healthy bacteria sit, such that they can digest it there, produce metabolites that are beneficial to us as humans. I think it's a total of 5, and I can actually put the link in the description box as well that describes what a prebiotic should do. And prebiotics are things like bananas, things that are heavy in fiber. Asparagus, onions too are good prebiotics. So consuming prebiotics will keep our healthy bacteria healthy, which is then good for us. So prebiotics is your second tip. The third tip is consuming less sugar and actually sweeteners too. And I'm totally guilty for this, man. I know that sweeteners contain aspartame, and I never related it to gut health. My thought process was always just, I want something sweet, but I don't necessarily want the calories with it or the side effects that come with a sugar high and things like that. So, but sweeteners and sugars as well can alter your gut microbiome and decrease the variety and amount of healthy bacteria. So consuming less sugar and less sweeteners is my third tip. My fourth tip for you is decreasing stress in general. And I mean, at this current time, in this current state of affairs, I don't know how you guys are doing it, because I don't know what I'm doing, but it is a way to promote our healthy bacteria. I know that I am trying to be purposeful of turning my brain off when I go to sleep, and I'm particularly using sleep because if we don't get enough sleep, we are stressed. There was a paper that I saw, and this was actually a mouse study, and that showed in 2 groups of mice. They stressed both groups of mice by sort of reversing their light and dark cycles. And in one group, they gave them their regular healthy chow, and in the other group, they gave them like a high-fat, high-sugar diet. And the mice that had the stress and the high-fat, high-sugar diet were the mice that showed dysbiosis and decreased number of healthy bacteria in the microbiome. So it's proven in mice studies, and you can extrapolate that with humans. It would possibly be real, but just trying to get a good amount of sleep will decrease stress and promote healthy gut bacteria. My next tip after trying to decrease stress will be limiting antibiotic use. Actually, if we can limit the amount of antibiotics we use, and as a health professional, we at least try to be very judicious with prescribing antibiotics, or even using antibiotics in the hospital too, because we know that it can alter your microbiome in your GI tract as well as in other areas of your body. Particularly speaking as a pediatrician and as a neonatologist, it's important developmentally, because there's some studies that show that if you alter the baby's microbiome early, it comes back, but it may come back late, it may not come back fully, it may come back and it's not what it should have been, as healthy as it should have been. So these are all considerations that we take into account when we're making these recommendations or making prescriptions or making a care plan. So that's my next tip. Consume antibiotics very judiciously, because for the most times we don't need them, in an outpatient setting. And then my last tip will be, I hope I didn't forget this one. It was sweeteners, sleep, antibiotics. I think that was the last one I was supposed to talk about. Antibiotics and well, that's probably it. I think that was the last one, guys. Well, so I hope this was fun. This was a little different. I wanted this to be slightly less anxiety provoking than last week's video with everything that's going on. I didn't want this particular video to, I wanted to make a video this week. I didn't want this week to go by without making a video. And because it offers me a way to keep communicating with you guys, even with everything else that I'm dealing with. But I think for now, I will say that I'll keep making videos. I am excited to do this. I'm excited for this journey. I am excited to see the world coming together and trying to be kind to each other. And I hope that this platform and this forum continues to offer you guys information with which to make informed decisions, and just general good vibes to remind you guys that we're all human and we should be kind to each other. So click the like button, subscribe, comment, share, and I will see you all next week. Thank you.